courtside of the Virtual Hardwood. It's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode number 442. I am Andrew in our forum, and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. I'm joined as always by Derek. He is DV3 in our forum, and DV384 on Twitter. Derek, good to be talking to you as always. What's new this week?
Oh, nice to be talking to you again. Andrew, I had two really great retro pickups this past week.
A little jealous, actually.
Yeah, but you're going to be a winner at the end of this, too.
True.
So I ended up getting Lakers versus Celtics in the NBA playoffs, the 1989 DOS version. Full, complete in-box, in good condition. No discoloring on the box. It has the manual in it. Manual is in pristine condition. Floppy disk is in great condition, etc. Got all of that for $20. And I was floored that I got it for that price. So was at B-Ball Video Games, because he was watching, to see if I won and whatnot. He announced to me that I won my bid before I even knew it. He was like monitoring it because he was so excited that I might be able to get it for that price. But yeah, I put a bid for $20 out there for this, and nobody outbid me. And I ended up getting that, and I love having that in the collection. And the reason why you win is because now I have two floppy disks for Lakers versus Celtics, and I'm going to be sending you one. And so now you'll have that game in your collection.
Absolutely, and I definitely appreciate that, because that's a holy grail for me, as I've said in previous shows. But, shout out to B-Ball Video Games. Better than eBay notifications.
No, I mean, he's hardcore.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy, not only have I connected with him on many different basketball games using Parsec, always fun, whether we're playing co-op against each other, with mods, without mods, etc. He's good at the games, and he's just a hardcore basketball gamer, like you can tell. And he posts his collections on social media, so like on Twitter and whatnot, and he just has such a huge basketball gaming collection, and it's just really cool to know him, right? Like, it's really nice to know somebody else who's really into this stuff, kind of like we are. But yeah, I mean, when he sees good deals and all of that stuff, he'll let me know. And if I see some good deals or have good experiences with different adapters or hookups or whatnot, or applications, I'll let him know. And I think that's really cool about the community right now, and sharing, and hey, sharing is caring and whatnot. And we got a good group of people in the NLSC community. I also had another pickup as well, and I just shared that tonight. So I had already had NBA in the Zone for PlayStation, but I only had the disc. And you know how I am about the long boxes.
Of course.
Like, I love the long boxes. I love how they look. I love the art. I love it's just a different experience getting one of the long boxes. So I found the NBA in the Zone for PlayStation, complete in-box, long box, in pristine condition. It's an amazing condition. Has the manual. The disc has no scratches on it, etc. So now I have two NBA in the Zone games. But yeah, I finally got that long box, and it was only $4.97. What a steal.
These are some tremendous D's deals. And also further proof that, no, you don't have to spend a lot of money. Because people have been asking about that. We have been giving this advice in recent weeks. Because, yeah, you look around on eBay, you look at Amazon, certainly, but you can get a lot of things. And of course, local stores, if you have one in your area, or if you have one that does postage, sometimes you can find one that's not too far away that will charge minimal postage, and we'll still have pretty good prices on those games. But eBay also goes to show that certainly buy now prices are important if you can get a great deal there, but sometimes check out those auctions and put your maximum bid, and just leave it there, obviously, because that's how eBay works. You can set your maximum bid, and if you don't want to go over that, just stop bidding. Don't put any further amounts in. But sometimes you can pick up a great deal like that if nobody else is looking at that auction at that time. You can get lucky, and you got really lucky with that $20 in box, especially considering how much that game has gone for other people.
Well, I received it and I thought, like, there's got to be like a catch here, right?
Yeah.
Like, thought it was might be a little bit more discolored than the pictures showed. I thought that, maybe the manual would be ripped up, or there may be, a problem with the disc or something like that. And yeah, I mean, I just got lucky, to be honest with you.
How good were manuals back in the day? How good were manuals?
Yeah, I mean, I showed a screenshot of the manual from the game. And they're so cool because, like, in the manual, it shows like the league leaders for that year. They didn't have to put that in there.
Yeah.
Right. But they show like John Stockton led the league in assists. So John Stockton's in there and it shows his assist numbers and stuff. It shows the scoring leader, the rebounding leader, all of that stuff. It shows the logos across the top of the page, etc. Like, so cool. Yeah. You go through these different manuals and they were doing a lot of creative things with them, between the art that's in the backdrop behind the text, the way they were displaying information and the type of information they displayed, etc. Really cool. Like, I love looking at them. And that's why I always aim for my collections. I always aim to have the game have the correct artwork on the front. So the cover art to be correct, and to always have the manual with the game to come with it, and then obviously the disc or cartridge or whatnot to be in good shape. That's what I consider complete. And luckily, I'm usually able to find that stuff at a fair price.
And look, it's obviously fallen out of vogue because a lot of things are digital now. NBA 2K on PC is digital only. We have no choice there. But I do miss getting those manuals. I mean, look at people doing unboxing videos on YouTube. People still like physical items. People like opening up a box and seeing cool stuff, right? So we haven't had a manual, even on the consoles, where we do have a disc version of NBA 2K and NBA Live in recent years, up until 2018 anyway. We don't have those manuals, those feelies that you used to have. I've talked about getting that complete in box Scottie Pippen, Slime City with Scottie Pippen, and having the temporary tattoos and stickers and other things that come in the box. Are they a bit corny? Are they great in the grand scheme of things? Great designs, great artwork. I mean, they're very 90s, and I feel very nostalgic looking at them. It's just cool to open that box and see it. Hell, even looking at the promotional material in some of those old boxes is very nostalgic.
Right. Like, remember I shared on Twitter the 989 Sports little insert that they had in one of the shootout games. I believe it was Shootout 2001. And it was this little booklet that shows all the different games that, sports games that 989 Sports was releasing that year. And it's really cool to look at that because that's what they were promoting at the time. Right. So that's not the manual or anything. That's a promotional piece that they put in there. So I do think that's really cool. But you talk about wanting the physical copy and how people still want that and all of that stuff. What is the most exciting thing, Andrew, about Christmas morning?
I mean, opening up the presents, ripping off that paper. Some people say take it off carefully. My mum's one of those people, but no, I'm sorry, I'm tearing that stuff off, and ribbon tearing and paper tearing off, and opening it up and holding that in your hands, holding that box in your hands. It's like when you'd go to the store and buy something and you come home and you're reading it in the car or ride home, right? On the way home as a kid, in the back seat or whatever, reading the back of the box and just imagining, all the fun you're going to have with this game. Or opening it on Christmas Day, as you said, or a birthday present. There is something special about physical media, and I think, and I have talked about this on an article before, with physical media, a lot, for all the people who criticize it and say, oh, that's so last century, or whatever, you look at all these things that are getting taken off streaming services, all these shows or movies that are taken off streaming services, no longer available, and this is where DVDs and Blu-rays come in handy, people, that if it gets taken off the streaming service, you've still got that copy of it, or games that get removed from the Steam store or the other digital platforms. Physical media still has its place in 2022.
No, 100%. I think that the idea of opening a present, whether it was given to you or it's something you bought for yourself, all of that stuff, there will always be excitement behind that. When I get my Amazon packages or my eBay packages, what do you think happens? How long do you think that wrapping or that container they're in or whatever? How long do you think that stays on the product?
I'd say from the trip from the mailbox to the apartment. I would say.
I can promise you that sometimes it doesn't make it to the apartment.
There you
While
go.
I'm walking, I will open.
I like it. I like that excitement.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going somewhere and I'm picking up the mail along the way, I will grab the mail. I will open it sometimes in my car because I'm super excited. It's that Christmas morning feeling,
Yeah,
right? It
definitely.
doesn't get old. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's fun to get stuff. I remember, before my grandfather passed away, we were having Christmas Day over there, and it was me, my brothers, and him, and we were all opening gifts and whatnot. Do you think that my grandfather, who at the time was in his mid 80s, do you think that he slowly unwrapped his gifts?
No, not at all.
No.
No.
He ripped into him. Do you think he cared about preserving the paper? No, he was ripping into his gifts because it was still super exciting for him. So we never lose that feeling and whatnot. And I never plan on losing it. So I think what's really cool about collecting and being so into this is you can have that feeling quite often. Right. So I've been trying to round out my collection a little bit more lately and picking up stuff. And I picked up a few games that I was missing from the NBA Shootout / NBA series, the 989 Sports and San Diego Studio series. And I was able to get all of the NBA games that they ever made. So I have all of those in my collection, and I shared that on Twitter. What a great feeling that is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not missing any of the games they made. I can play them whenever I want, and it's just awesome. And I love looking at all the art. They're all complete in box. For the original NBA Shootout, it's the long box, which I showed also on Twitter, etc. And I just love having all of it.
I love seeing you post those new arrivals. I haven't been collecting myself lately, simply because I've been spending money on other things, bills mostly, recently, so I haven't really been searching. Obviously, I have a pretty huge collection as it is already. I need to look and see what other things I can get at a reasonable price. Obviously, you're sending me that Lakers versus Celtics, which I really appreciate, adding that to the collection. Giving my external floppy disk drive a go, getting that working with DOSBox, that'll be great. And playing it on that original media will be a lot of fun. It'll load slowly, but that'll be part of the experience to to do that. I'll also open up that Slam City with Scottie Pippen box and post some photos on Twitter at Andrew NLSC, of course, of the feelies and the promotional material in there, because again that was so enjoyable to look at back in the day. So obviously we'll be talking about NBA 2K23 news this week, and on the subject of collecting. No old stuff this week, Derek, but I did actually pre-order the Jordan edition of NBA 2K23. At the end of the day, I couldn't pass that up.
So yeah, I did. I pre-ordered the NBA 2K23 for the PC, and I actually did the Jordan edition as well. And the reason why I did that is because I may get into my team.
Same.
If I like the game, but I just have to like the game. Like, I need to like the gameplay, and it needs to be enjoyable on the sticks. I didn't enjoy my team at all on 2K22 PC because I thought the gameplay was honestly piss poor in a lot of different ways, which I've talked about on many different, prior podcasts and whatnot. But and then the Series X version, my brother and I were talking about it. We weren't sure if we were going to go 50-50 on it and possibly do like the League Pass version. The $150 version, and maybe both of us split it. We still, need to finish up on those conversations and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I just want to like the game. I want to like the gameplay. I want to have fun with it. If I like the PC version, I'll probably get into modding it, all of that stuff.
I'm in the same boat, and I actually thought about the Championship Edition as well because of League Pass, but I'm kind of glad I didn't, because they're actually looking at, apparently just announced that they're going to be dropping the price of League Pass by about 50% or up to 60% possibly. So it might actually be cheaper for some people to, especially if you only go for the team option, the home team option, where you only follow your chosen team. With that package, if that's still available, it's much cheaper anyway. So yeah, I didn't go for the Championship Edition. The Jordan cover, I really like that Jordan cover art this year, so that's what I opted for. I did get the Jordan Edition pre-ordered on both PC and PlayStation 5, so it does come with that extra 100,000 VC and the extra MT. So again, if I do a little bit with my career, again, if I do anything with my career this year, it's pretty much going to be just to if I end up playing with some of the guys, if they jump on again, then I might do a little bit of that. I'm mostly going to be my NBA this year. I would imagine a bit of my team again if I like the gameplay as you said out of the box, because we obviously can't change the sliders in my team or my career for that matter. But it's there because I do want to review the game and give my impressions on it and be able to comment on it from a hands-on perspective. So I will be checking out my team and my career. Whether I spend as much time in those modes remains to be seen. I would like to spend more time with the 90s era in my NBA, as I've said on a previous show. But I will be checking that out, and it does help to have that extra currency and the pre-order bonuses for that. And I don't buy a lot of games every year, but I do commit to getting the basketball games every year, and I did want the Jordan edition because I am a huge Jordan fan.
Yeah. I want to say, too, the League Pass, it being cut down, like 50% and whatnot, that doesn't surprise me at all for two reasons. One, streaming, right? Yep. Illegal streaming and streaming services, etc. And then also the fact that if we're going to be completely honest, I don't think the NBA as a whole is as popular as it once was. I think that people will watch their local team and they're happy with that, and they'll fanboy over their local team, and they'll talk about their local team on social media and everything. And then they'll watch an occasional nationally televised game, and then that's basically it, right? There's not like a ton of these kids and young adults that are going to pay for League Pass so they can watch all of these other teams that they don't have the time and patience for, right? So it doesn't surprise me that, League Pass probably hasn't done well over the last few years. As far as sales and whatnot, probably hasn't met expectations. And I would say that those are the reasons why the price has gone down.
I still think they need to put more historical content on there, quite frankly. On-demand historical content, not just a selection that's seemingly randomly chosen every month by whatever curators are working on that within the NBA media department. Again, I refer back to the WWE Network with how much historical content is on there. Even if I'm not watching the current product, my nostalgia for the wrestling I grew up with, I can jump onto the network and go back and watch full episodes of Raw and SmackDown from way back in the day, and any pay-per-views from back in the day, right there on demand. And it's worth it to have it there as a subscription to indulge that nostalgia whenever I feel like it. And it'll be the same with NBA League Pass. You give that at a reasonable price, as the network is, and people will jump on that. And you've got all that on-demand content, as well as the current games to stream. And that's just a huge missed opportunity for the NBA.
Yeah, what about a NBA History channel?
Absolutely.
Just straight up one channel, NBA History. And what it does is it plays reruns all day of old games, classic games, random games, etc. I would get that.
Definitely.
I think that's easier for people to sink their teeth into too, as well, because it's only one channel and it has a specific target, right? And that would just be basketball history, NBA history, etc. So, I don't know why they haven't explored that. If you listen to commentators today, the Kendrick Perkins and the JJ Redicks and all that stuff, it's almost like they're trying to erase history. Because of the way they talk so poorly about it.
Definitely.
So maybe that's why. I have no idea.
Wouldn't surprise me, no.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, guys. You can't erase the great teams and players and, of the past and, the glorious things that have happened in basketball history and whatnot.
And I'll just put it out there that if you want to make the current NBA seem more impressive, don't talk down the previous NBA. You want to talk about why you want to argue why the NBA is greater than the greatest, not that the greatest was actually a low bar to clear. Just putting it out there, just food for thought.
It's telling that they do that, right?
Exactly.
It's telling that they have to constantly talk about, how great everything is now in comparison to the way it was in the past, and how much better they think it is, and all of that stuff, and even to go as far as to insult past players and teams ignorantly, call them plumbers or state that they played no competition, all of this stuff. if you have to continue to do that over and over and over and over again, you're basically telling on yourself that you're full of it.
If you do have to make that argument, if you have to lower the bar, yeah.
Right. You're definitely telling on yourself, and you're full of it. So absolutely can't stand that stuff, and they're wrong on all levels.
Agreed. I don't think there's any reasonable debate that says otherwise. But before we get into the 2K23 news this week, speaking of upgrading to next gen and whatnot, and the current gen versus next gen and all the controversy there, I sent you a tweet that I thought was particularly toxic, and it really just highlights the toxicity of the interactions people have on social media and the thinking and the tribalism and everything else surrounding video games that are just so unnecessary. And I had to send you that tweet right away because I had to say, what a dick. And I say that because, well, here's the tweet. Stop being broke and get a next-gen console. We don't have time or money to try and work with your current-gen peoples. And this is in response to somebody commiserating that the current-gen version is missing out on various features in NBA 2K23. And again, I saw that, Derek, and I thought, what an entitled attitude to have. And also misses the point on how difficult it is to try and get your hands on these consoles at the moment.
Yeah, a lot of context missing in that, right? I mean, there's one thing is he's calling people broke, but these systems are, even if you're getting the Series S and one controller and whatnot, it's $300. If you're getting PS5 and Xbox Series X, it's a few $100s more, right? So that's still a lot of money to spend at one time for somebody. And to look down on them or talk about them and like they're inferior and whatnot because maybe they can't afford one of the new consoles is absolutely ridiculous, especially considering the economy today, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the issues that people are having with money and the price of food, the price of living in general, etc. That's absolutely ridiculous. And that's not the first time I've seen a tweet like that or a comment like that on social media. You and I have shared multiple comments similar. Just this year and whatnot. And these threads are absolutely toxic too. There's a lot of people that agree with this guy and others who make that comment. It's not just that. It's also like you just mentioned, it's the availability of the systems in so many different parts of the world. They haven't been often available. People are having trouble getting their hands on PS5s especially, but also Series X and whatnot. Series S has been a little bit more available, but not even close to what we had as far as availability when PS4 and Xbox One were the new gen, etc. So people are also battling with that, not being able to get their hands on the consoles. Furthermore, the majority of gamers around the world, I've talked about the statistics before, I shared them on Twitter, are still on last gen. They're still on PS4 gen. They're still on it. So basically that comment is calling the majority of gamers, the majority of, gamers in the world broke and crapping on them.
Behind the times, yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely insulting. It's ridiculous. It's missing context. But unfortunately, that's the attitude a lot of people who are on, PS5 gen. It's almost like this ridiculous elitist attitude. I'm sorry, but you're not special.
Okay? Exactly.
You're not more special than anybody else just because you have a PS5 or Xbox Series X or S.
And to your point about the availability, it's still very difficult to get hold of in Australia. I was very lucky to get mine in the second wave, not at launch, but at the second wave of the consoles about a month later. And there's actually, despite being very difficult to get your hands on in Australia, Sony Australia has actually put that up by $50, the price of the PS5, despite that lack of availability. So that's just ridiculous. That's not going down well, as it shouldn't. I'm looking at the bio. He's a teenager. He's a competitive player. Says it all. Immature and toxic right there. But yeah, I mean, okay, did your parents buy that for you? Did you buy that? You're calling other people broke, and did you buy that with your own money, kid? I'm just saying. But it was missing the point, and we see this so often of people bringing up these ad hominems to dismiss legitimate concerns and criticism. It's absolutely ridiculous, absolutely toxic. We'll always push back on it because it is such a reductive way of thinking, such an immature, toxic way of thinking to make that argument. And yeah, I'd send that to you because I mean, it's my fault, Derek. I'm looking at the replies on Twitter, right? So I'm kind of to blame here. But as soon as I saw that, I said, no, Derek's going to have to share my burden, my outrage burden of this. But yeah, that just ridiculous.
Well, people need to be treated better.
Yes.
Be a human being.
100%.
Support your fellow human being. Be understanding. Add context. Be able to. I've said it so many times. Be able to see the big picture.
Exactly.
It's such and unfortunately, a lot of these kids they don't. And I was young once too, and whatnot. And I've said and done some stupid things. To be completely honest with you. I don't remember ever doing stuff like that because that's just not part of my personality. I don't remember, being insulting like that, the way that he was. But yeah, I mean, we just got to be better human beings.
I mean, a lot of people would upgrade if they could. They've got the money there, but the consoles aren't. What are you going to do? That's nothing to do with being broke. That's supply not meeting demand.
Exactly. I mean, there's just a lot of different factors that come into play here.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community. But with that being said, we are in the final countdown to the release of NBA 2K23. Comes out next week. There's been a rush of news over the past few days that's going to continue up until release, and it's finally resembling a preview season, Derek. Way too late. This is always the case, but I wish we got this spread out over the months after the game was initially announced. This should really be starting in June.
Yeah, I love the Live King absolutely hates this, and I love it. He's like, why haven't we seen actual gameplay yet? And he's like, I'm playing NHL. The new NHL game from EA Sports right now, like he was playing it like right now, the beta version of it or whatever, the demo or whatever it was, and he was like, I'm playing this and we can't even get gameplay to be shown on NBA 2K23 until just like a day or so, or a day before like the release or whatever. Like kudos to him for continuing to call that out and being frustrated by it, as he should be and whatnot. But yeah, they get as many pre-orders as they possibly can. And, before they show like actual gameplay or people get their hands on the game, and, it works. It's a strategy that has worked, and they hit over 10 million in sales every year. And obviously they're the only, company making a
the game in town. Yeah.
So they're gonna get the sales. But I don't know. It's unbelievable what they get away with.
And it's kind of tough to talk about the news because it is coming through every day. By the time you're listening to this, there may be some gameplay footage. There's supposed to be some gameplay footage coming September 5th and 6th for the Jordan Challenge and other gameplay content. We will see what they go into, what they show. There's obviously been the gameplay blog. But some of this news is more exciting than others. I mean, there was an announcement of the brands that are going to be available to buy in 2K23. I didn't put a main page post about this. I didn't post about this in the forum or on the main page of the NLSC, nba-live.com, of course. I've been reporting on most of the news as it comes in as soon as I can, depending on whether I'm awake at the time when it comes through. But I didn't talk about that because it's not very exciting. All they've done is show a bunch of logos. There's not even a blog talking about the actual brands and giving any insight into it. So I did actually skip that particular post. That is something else they have mentioned, though. One of the first things that they announced was the guest announcers for 2K23, which include the Czar, Mike Fratello. He's announcing in the Jordan Challenge and the past eras in My NBA. That had already been revealed by previous blogs. Richard Jefferson is going to be joining the booth in the modern era, part of the rotating booth there, and Ray Clay is going to reprise his role as the Chicago Bulls PA announcer in Jordan Challenge games, which is really cool. I am glad that they've done that.
Yeah, Richard Jefferson redeemed himself, at least for a moment with me, but when he stated that Vince Carter was the most skilled player that he ever played with by far. I had to give him credit for that. But he has said a lot of stuff that bother me in the media ever since he's retired and everything. You and I have talked about it off air and whatnot. I hope that he's strong on the mic. I hope that he brings some, good insight and whatnot, and that he's a good personality in the game. So fingers crossed for that. Yeah, we already know Mike Fratello is going to be great.
Oh yeah,
it's the czar. I mean, he's just awesome, and he was awesome in the old NBA Live games, and whatnot. So that's a home run right there. That's a great addition to the Jordan Challenge and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, there's not too much to talk about news wise. Obviously, a new cover non-athlete. I'm just kidding. Well, am I? Yeah, I mean, I need to see gameplay, and I need to get my hands on the sticks to really form an opinion.
A lot of people were very excited about that J. Cole cover, and it's a nice-looking cover, but you and I, we looked at that and thought, I think we both had the same thought, that this is where basketball gaming is that it's drifted so far away that from us being the core demographic, or that key demographic, that people are excited about a non-basketball player being on the cover of NBA 2K, and there being a Dream Edition, people saying, I wish I could have pre-ordered this earlier. It's going to be a GameStop exclusive in the US and Canada, so it's pretty limited anyway. If you're like me, you're not going to be able to buy it even if you wanted to. The point that you made when we were talking about it, and it's I think it's the defining point of this, and one of the reasons that we are not against it so much. Well, I speak for myself, I suppose, that why I don't... If they want to do this as a gimmick, fine. It is ultimately, at the end of the day, it is a cover that if you are a collector, you may want to get. But it shows that they're focusing on this over, as you said to me when we were talking about it, paying legends like Barkley and Miller and everyone to be in the game. This is what they're investing in, and that's what bothers us.
Yeah, I want to first off say, you said that he's not a basketball player. I don't want anybody listening to this this podcast to try to come up here and be like, well, he is he played pro or he played semi-pro or whatever. If you've actually watched J. Cole play, just give me a break. The reason why he was even on those teams is because he was a famous musician, and it was going to give those clubs, publicity and whatnot. So let's be honest, he's not a good basketball player. I'm just going to put that out there.
It's a shame that there was no Master P edition of NBA Live 2000.
Hey, at least he played some preseason games. I think it was with the Raptors.
With the Raptors, yes, it was,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you actually watched him and were like, hey, this guy's decent, right? Like he looked like he was, he's a basketball player and whatnot. But as far as what their focus is, it's pretty clear that their target demographic is going to be young teens and like basically, teens in general and whatnot. And the focus is once again going to be less basketball related. We saw the trailer for the new My Career and whatnot. And I mentioned to you, I think it was like a 2-minute and 20-second long video. I was like, the majority of that video is not basketball, right? The majority of that video has absolutely nothing to do with basketball, or very little to do with basketball. Like, there's not much on-court action shown in that video because it's more about, the story and who you're talking to in the story, and your not even as much your come up in basketball, but the connections you have made and whatnot along the way, and your friends and all of that stuff. And it's all of this like non-basketball, gimmicky stuff and all of that. And I just think they're just pushed so far away from, it being mostly about basketball. And I think you've experienced that when you've revisited NBA 2K14, right?
Oh, definitely.
And my career, you see the difference because in NBA 2K14, my career, what was their focus?
NBA.
Basketball.
All NBA, yeah.
The NBA, right, exactly. It was NBA, it was basketball. It lives and breathes it in that game. So, yeah, I think it's, I don't know, it's telling. Like somebody, I think it was Teddy Bear the Gamer commented, and, before it was announced, and he said that he was hoping that it was Charles Barkley. Sorry, it wasn't. Some people were like, well, maybe it's LeBron James because it's 2K23 and he wore number 23, etc. Sorry, nope, not LeBron either. You get J. Cole. That's who you get on an NBA video game cover. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. You know that, and you're not either.
You know, I think it was the Live King who retweeted the trailer and said, "What is this?" And I had the same reaction. I retweeted and said, "Well, 2K14 is going to be my career experience if I stick with that going forward over the next 12 months." And that's for the reasons you stated, because it is focused on the NBA. And last year's My Career story was very much the same, where it was about these off-court brands and becoming an influencer and things like that. It seems like they're pretty much running back last year's story. And in fact, even your My Player character is going to be called MP again. I think they're just sticking with that uninspired initials of for your My Player MP. And that's going to just be there in the audio for commentary and during cutscenes and whatnot. And yeah, it really has drifted away from its roots as that simulating the experience of playing through an NBA career and the experience of making it to the NBA like that. It sounds like it's going to pick up after the draft, so how much pre-NBA stuff there's going to be. And look, you can argue that there was too much pre-NBA stuff in the past, but there's also something that people asked for as far as having those different routes to the NBA, G League, or college, etc. So there's always value in that. I think the real problem with My Career is getting people into the online scene as quickly as possible. If you're not interested in the NBA side of things, not having to play that, but at the same time, if you're not interested in the online side of things, having a robust NBA experience. And it feels like no one's really being catered to as much as they could be with the approach to My Career and the connected modes. So that is disappointing. I looked at the trailer. I saw Kendrick Perkins being an antagonist again, so that immediately killed my hype for the mode. I really don't want a My Player that is battling with Kendrick Perkins and JJ Redick in a war of words. That just does not entertain me at all. So I was quite underwhelmed with that. And again, we're not getting any insights into the improvements of how the actual My Career experience, as far as managing your career or gameplay or anything else, anything that's the nuts and bolts of that experience and everything is not mentioned at all. It's just a trailer. Very underwhelming.
Yeah, I will say this. First off, you should stick with NBA 2K14.
Terry Hansen.
My Career.
Yeah.
Sounds like you. Yeah. It sounds like you will, which is the smart move. Number two, I will give 2K credit. Hopefully the gameplay's strong, but I will give them credit with their focus on the NBA for the NBA eras. So the My NBA eras option.
Agreed.
And also the Jordan Challenge. And putting the work in on that. So they're not moving far away from the NBA with that content. But I personally think, to be honest with you, and for the reasons that I stated, that having J. Cole as an NBA 2K cover athlete tells a story. Let's put it that way.
It does. As far as My Career on current gen, presumably it's going to have the same kind of story, or maybe a trimmed down version of it. Some of the cutscenes, it's not going to have the full city, obviously. It will have the neighborhood again, which once again is on a boat, Derek. The Concha del Mar has been replaced by the Goat Boat. I keep seeing the Goat Boat, and the Love Boat theme pops into my head. So that's just putting that out there. But I'm not going to go right into it because, again, My Career in recent games has really not gripped me, and the whole online element is definitely been off-putting to me as well. But they have redesigned the boat this year so that the decks are a bit more easier to navigate. They've got everything in better places. The shops are on the same floor as the prize wheel, so you don't have to run through multiple levels after you get a free shirt or whatever on the daily prize wheel. There's going to be new excursions. The big thing that they've added is no-wait gameplay to Park. So you've got Next, and you also have no-wait gameplay similar to the Rec or the old gym in Next Gen. So they've finally got that kind of matchmaking in there. But again, there's nothing really deep about that matchmaking from what I can see. The matchmaking in the Rec and Pro-Am was very sketchy in years past, in my experience. So that's the kind of concerns I have. Like on paper, that sounds good. No wait gameplay. Skip Got Next because Got Next, as I've said in an article before, gotta go. Because it is literally simulating the most boring part of any activity, which is waiting in line to participate in said activity. I know conceptually why they've got Next there. It makes sense. It's also a hassle, and it also leads to the toxicity of people jumping off and just standing around because they don't want to play with people who don't have a high enough win percentage and all that toxicity of the online scene. And so it's great that they've added that, but there's so much more they could be doing with matchmaking and whatnot that they haven't touched upon. new quests by interacting with NPCs, new rival quests, etc. The story has been described as immersive and realistic with quote-unquote authentic dialogue. Yeah, that remains to be seen based on some previous stories and so forth. But yeah, they've tried to enhance it a little bit for current gen. So it is nice to see current gen getting a little bit of attention in that regard, Derek. It doesn't really draw me back into my career, but for those people playing it still, I do like that they've put a little bit of effort in there.
Yeah, I think that any issues the game has, any flaws in regards to the story in my career or, connections online, all of that stuff. I think all of that or most of it will be forgiven as long as people have fun with the gameplay. As long as they think that the game is fun and they look forward to jumping on it and playing it. I know there's always going to be those people that complain no matter what. That's with everything for the most part. But yeah, I think strong gameplay can, silence a lot of people, to be honest with you, as far as like complaints go.
Oh, definitely, and the mode's got enough depth that if the story's not too intrusive and all the features are working properly and the gameplay is up to scratch, then it can still be enjoyable. But the extracurricular stuff is just too much of a turn-off for me at the moment. I don't have the crew's not together. The NLC Thrillho crew is not together playing games these days, so I don't really have that incentive to grind up a player to take him online and play with friends. So yeah, I have less interest there. It's much better to be playing the 2K14 my career and into the 5th season now, as it happens. 4-time champion, 4 in a row. Yeah, but that's what's more appealing to me than my career in new games. But that's basically what we know of it at this point. More information on the city will be out this week. By the time we record next week's show, I should say, we'll have all this news, and the game itself will be out. So we'll be talking about our first impressions of NBA 2K23 on next week's show, rather than some of this news that's dropping. Although we may touch on it to at least compare to our initial impressions at the very least. The other interesting thing, apart from the brands, which is how to spend VC in my career, is what they've talked about today when we're recording this, is also a soundtrack announcement. Although they didn't really announce that much about the soundtrack, Derek. They just mentioned some of the 50-plus artists that are going to be there at launch. There's going to be 3 new songs debuting every week, added every Friday. We don't actually have a full track list yet. They didn't even do that. There is a playlist you can follow on Spotify, but it doesn't actually have anything in there at the moment. Doesn't bother me. I mean, I've not been a huge fan of the soundtracks in recent games, probably showing my age in that respect, but yeah, it doesn't really bother me one way or the other. But interesting that they kind of made an announcement without really making an announcement. But that also, Derek, kind of sums up how this final rush of news is. They're just kind of throwing out some tidbits every single day, and it's still kind of underwhelming in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think that's a nice touch. I think the idea of adding music, every week or periodically and whatnot, to kind of freshen that experience, even though there are already by default like 50 different songs on the game. I think that's a nice touch and something new to try.
Agreed.
And I think it's a good thing that can help certain artists get exposure and whatnot. Hopefully with doing that they bring in some underground music. I think that would be a really good idea, or lesser known artists. Because one of the ways that I learned of lesser known artists was from some of the, underground music or, tunes that weren't played on the radio, etc., that was included in some of the past NBA games.
Same.
Right. And whatnot. And I think that's a great thing to do, not only for the artist, but I think it makes the game unique as well. It makes it easier to remember, etc. So that's a really nice touch. Like I said, there's a lot of things that I like that NBA 2K is doing this year. That I think is a good idea. It's good to try. My NBA eras, I think that's a great idea. I hope the game plays well, because I'll jump into that. The stuff they're doing with my team with no contracts, the Jordan Challenge. This is a big year.
It is.
Content-wise and for content changes for NBA 2K. I would say, so the biggest probably since NBA 2K16. So I applaud them on that.
I said it in Monday Tip-Off this week that I think it has the potential to be a landmark release by doing these things like, as you say, removing my team contracts. That's big. My NBA eras is huge. Bringing back the Jordan Challenge again, huge. So the gameplay itself is also a slam dunk, if you will. it's going to be a very special release, and I hope so. I don't like being negative about my hobby. I said that in the article as well in Monday Tip-Off. I don't like being negative and jaded and cynical. It's kind of natural after you've been playing games for so many years.
But look how positive we are in this podcast, Andrew, when it comes to talking about some games that we're revisiting and whatnot.
Oh,
and
indeed.
When we're talking about, past games, it doesn't matter if it's a live game or a 2K game or a shootout game or In the Zone, because we had a really good experience when we revisited In the Zone as well. You had fun when you played Inside Drive with me. We talked about that on the podcast. We're so positive. We're not negative people. Right?
Absolutely.
We're not negative about our hobby. We're not negative about we don't favor EA or favor 2K or favor one company and everything. I'd like to say we're fair and honest and whatnot.
And that's why we don't get invited to stuff as well.
Right, exactly. That's why we don't get invited to stuff. But we've been open and honest on this podcast that over the last few years, and on the forum as well, but over the last few years, we have not liked the gameplay direction and overall direction of 2K and the way they've handled the NBA 2K series, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No.
I just wanted to point that out. Like, we are not negative people.
We're not, no. There is a certain amount of skepticism and cynicism that does creep in after seeing so many promises broken, lies thrown out there in some of the previews in years past, which has made us a bit more inclined to take things with more than a grain of salt at times. At the end of the day, I do want to look forward to 2K23, and I do want it to impress me. I do want to have fun with it, because 2K21 and 2K22, I didn't have that enjoyment. I was going to get them anyway and cover them. I don't regret the purchases or anything. It's kind of a part and parcel of being a content creator that you need to get your hands on the games, but they didn't live up to my expectations, at least not in a positive way, unfortunately. So I am hoping for the 2K23 will be that landmark release. I mean, MJ on the cover, the Jordan Challenge coming back, some really great content additions with my team and my NBA eras and whatnot, and even current gen looking like it's got a bit of attention to it as well. Yeah, I want this to be a great year for basketball gaming. I want a great new game to play. I have plenty of games to fall back on, obviously, but I mean, we still want the new game coming out every year to be great as well. And I am feeling optimistic, cautiously so. But there are things that I really like. I just want the gameplay to live up to my expectations, or be something I can work with sliders at the very least, because I do love the sound of the content in 2K23.
Yeah, and in that first week or two when NBA 2K23 comes out, that I'm going to be getting a bunch of highlights for the top 10.
Absolutely.
For the newest title. So I'm really looking forward to that, and being able to showcase those highlights in the NLSC top 10 plays of the week. So that'll be a lot of fun.
And with my pre-order that I got, I'm actually going to pick that up from store. No more postage. I learned my lesson after last year's debacle.
Yeah, I think somebody like you and I, we need to get our hands on the game right away.
Definitely.
It's like this thing, like we want to be one of the first people to look at it, and we want to be able to dive in right away, and we don't want to miss out on anything. So, yeah, that's a good move by you.
And we will have those impressions next week on the show, of course, and maybe touch on some of the news, or at least to compare it to the final game, since we will have the game in our hands, and we can talk about whether some of the previews appear to have lived up to to what they promised. But we will get to that next week. But before we wrap up this week, Derek, how about we open up the mailbag?
To the mailman, the bump fake. What an unbelievable dunk!
And the question you threw out there this week, Derek, basketball video game legends, role players, and even bench warmers having ridiculous performances. What non-stars overachieved during your basketball gaming sessions? And this is a topic that we love to talk about, because we have so many memories of those role players and non-stars and bench players, bench warmers and whatnot, going off for these ridiculous performances on the virtual hardwood. And based on the responses we got, Derek, we are definitely not alone in that regard.
Yeah, people mentioning players that are video game legends in my own house. That tells me that I know they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
Right. Roger and Nate, Live 2001 Legends, have brought up Ray Allen before as a video game legend. He is the biggest video game legend probably in my house. Just absolutely unstoppable in so many of the 2K games, like 2K11 and 2K10 and whatnot, and just in 2K12 fire from anywhere. Now, he's obviously a star, right? So he was an example of a video game legend star. But I was more curious about non-stars. I was curious about role players, even bench warmers and whatnot that were video game legends or had amazing performances for other people. And some of those names look familiar that they were mentioning.
Definitely some familiar names on that list, and I've talked about some of them before. We both have. Jumper Joe Alexander is one for me. Travis Outlaw in my Live 06 Dynasty. Eric Piatkowski was huge. I remember he basically won a game for me in the fourth quarter. Had him in the game and just spurred this comeback. And I had to give him the start in the next game after that. There's no way I could bring him off the bench, so I gave him a start in that game. Which is the fun thing I always love playing with real rosters in a dynasty mode, in franchise mode, that you would have these. This story that develops throughout the season, and these players that you'll become attached to, and they'd have great performances for you, and you'd change the lineup just as in real life. And sometimes you'd get players on a hot streak, so you give them a start, and a regular starter in real life may not be playing well for you, so you move them to the bench. But even just the one-off games, the exhibition games that we've had, and you've had against each other and against your brothers and with my cousin and everything else, or just against the CPU, just these great performances by players who sometimes do go off in real life, and we have seen some amazing performances by role players and bench warmers when they've got an opportunity. But yeah, sometimes it really goes wild, and Alonzo G, I know, is one for you as well.
Yeah, here are some of the video game legends in my household. Alonzo G, Dan Dickow, Keith Van Horn, Pat Garrity, Andrew Goudlock, Ansu Sese, Hashim Thabit, Troy Murphy, Walter Herman, the duo of Greg Monroe and Larry Sanders, Walter McCarty, Kirk Heinrich, and there are more, but those are just some of the video game legends from my household.
Love that Kirk Heinrich is in there, obviously, former Bull, of course. He and Ben Gordon were the original Splash Brothers in my Live 06 Dynasty as well. They were a bit of a dynamic duo in the backcourt there, and yeah, obviously those names, a lot of them I remember. And so let's get to some of our listeners' responses. And first up, we do have Roger Ward, who along with Nate, of course, is they are the NBA Live 2001 legends, and he's got some legends from Live 2001. And okay, check out this list, Eric. Pat Garrity, Cedric Sabalos, John Crotty, Lee Nailon, Darvin Ham, Eric Piatkowski, Ryan Bowen, Matt Bullard, and Rodney Rogers. Isn't that a nostalgic list?
Well, it's funny because Pat Garrity and whatnot, and Eric Piatkowski, and I had mentioned Keith Van Horn and whatnot as well. What do they have in common? Tall and can shoot, and those guys are deadly in a lot of the older video games. If you're tall and you can shoot, you can have huge games. I laughed at Darvin Ham being in there because he's also kind of a video game legend in our house. And he's one of those guys that just because he was in the dunk contest at one point, they made him an unbelievable dunker in pretty much every game that he was in for the rest of his career. It's just like one of those things that follows the players. If you were in a dunk contest, you're going to be dominant going to the hoop. So that doesn't surprise me. And like Roger stated, he's also fast and, he can get steals and whatnot. Alonzo G was ridiculously, in my household, it was ridiculously athletic and just, I always call him like a souped up Julius Erving in NBA 2K 11 and 12 and whatnot. And those attributes for him followed him for several different video games. Right? Like he just was dominant over and over and over again in different games. So it is funny how that works.
Darvin Ham, of course, new Lakers coach, obviously, but also broke a backboard in college. And you're right, that reputation as a dunker and a powerful dunker and a spectacular dunker and whatnot, they do last in video games. Even though he had his moments in the years that followed, but nothing quite like the dunk contest. But still, in games, he still had that performance. As you said, that's an interesting phenomenon of video games and player ratings. Absolutely. Matt Bullard, of course, had a game winner for Nate and Roger there, replacing. Didn't it take Hakeem out to put Bullard in and hit that game winner in the top 10?
Yeah, that was in the top 10 one week, deservedly so. But Matt Bullard's also a video game legend in our house. In fact, we just drafted the other night on NBA 2K17 a video game legends team, and Matt Bullard's on the bench. for that team. So yeah, he's a legend in our house.
Eric Podkowski, as I mentioned, also a favorite of mine. Cedric Ceballos was an all-star one year, of course, and a pretty good player, but again, not a superstar player, and another player that could really go off in games a little bit more often than he did in real life. And other very nostalgic names there. John Crotty, again, you just bring up a bench player from the 90s, random bench player from the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, John Crotty, that like a Marty Conlon just pops into my head as well. So I really enjoyed that list. Thank you, Roger. King J Mace, NBA 2K12, Eddie House was better than Prime Steph. Make 1-3, and he was hot for the rest of the game. Yeah, I mean, Eddie House could shoot the ball, obviously, but yeah, get on fire with him, get on that hot streak in 2K, and he could be deadly.
Yeah, the thing with Eddie House, too, is he just gets his shot off so fast in the video game, kind of like in real life, that you feel like you can just get it off whenever you want, right? And you always have this feeling of being open with him. So if you get it going with Eddie House, you could reel off 10 to 15 threes in a game pretty easily and whatnot. So yeah, Eddie House had a reputation for getting hot, and they did a good job of, replicating that in the games.
Next up, we have Dr. Toboggan MD _ I don't remember the year, but Eric Gordon was insane. 2K14, 15-ish maybe. Terrence Davis in 2K19 was Clay on steroids too. Siakam in 19 and 20 was Giannis with a jumper. Raptors must have some sort of boost from Nurse, lol. TJ McConnell, when he was still a creative player, was a point guard too. Yeah, I've seen some people mention that. I think a couple of other people backed up the Eric Gordon being a beast.
Yeah, I was one of them, actually. In 2K14 and 2K15, it feels like he never misses. You hate playing him on the higher difficulty levels, against the computer, because they will go to him often, and he will hit contested all over the floor and whatnot. I definitely remember him being just super dominant in NBA 2K14. So maybe that's what he's talking about. But I know that in both 2K14 and 15, that followed him. He was just super dominant shooting the ball.
In my 2K14, my career, actually, Eric Gordon was the big free agent signing of the Knicks and became an all-star with them. So, yeah, I think that definitely lines up with him being that 2K14, 2K15 superstar. And Terrence Davis and Siakam. Well, anytime you get a very athletic player, you can usually dominate with them in video games.
Right. It's also like if you had somebody that shot a really good 3-point percentage and you're good mechanically at the game, like you're good on the sticks and everything, you can find that player over and over and over again in decent spots to get a shot off during the game, right? Which is why, like, having a guy on the floor that shot a good percentage can almost be a cheat code. Definitely. Sometimes when you're playing these games. And Eric Gordon's a case of that.
At NevermindMe43 on Twitter. Let's not forget Wesley Johnson in 2K11. I would be playing against a buddy who was a huge Peck and Love fan, but he would just drop 40-50 occasionally with Wesley Johnson, spin moves, posters, shaking my head, and a jumper. I always ask him how Wesley Johnson is doing now, lol. Wesley Johnson, not really a superstar in real life, didn't pan out that way, but obviously another one of those players that has that athleticism and the shooting ratings in 2K11 at least to really go off.
My brother and I used to joke around about that on NBA 2K15. Even though Kobe was on the team, oftentimes you felt yourself using Wesley Johnson more on the Lakers when he was with them. So we would call Wesley Johnson like Bean. Like we would basically treat him like he was Kobe Bryant because he was still like overdone and over dominant and whatnot. So that's something that followed him. Right, because they didn't know how to handle a guy with Wesley Johnson's skill set, right? Like a guy that was long, that could shoot it from the outside and get to the rim from time to time. They didn't know how to handle a player like that. So, like, they overdid him and made him too dominant as a result.
Next up is iMason KOG. He's got a full roster for us, basically. He gave us a roster of legends here. Gerald Green, Keon Dooling, Steve Novak, Tyrus Thomas, Rick Fox, Jeremy Lamb, Kendall Gill, Nick Anderson, Dennis Scott, Alonzo G, Delonte West, Daniel Boobie Gibson, Donald Royal, and Reggie Evans. And yes, those names jump out to me, obviously. And Reggie Evans was one of those players that would just be a beast on the boards, and defensively, you get him in a dynasty, in a franchise mode to add there. Alonzo G, you've mentioned, again, on this show and on previous ones, how dominant he was. Keon Dooling, the 2K7 legend, not 2K17, the 2K7 legend. Tyrus Thomas was a bit boosted on those mid-2000s Bulls teams, could be a bit of a star and develop into one with his potential rating. Unfortunately, it didn't happen in real life. Some great 90s role players there with Kendall Gill and Nick Anderson, Dennis Scott. Delonte West we saw in the series you put together with the Virtual Hardwood Legends, so very appropriate there. And of course Rick Fox. You mentioned that as well, that you've had a similar experiences with Rick Fox.
Yeah, the Delonte West thing, obviously, NBA Live 10, one of the most dominant performances I've ever seen in a video game, pulled off by Cavs 4872 in the NLSC NBA Live 10 tournament. Delonte West was super unstoppable in many different games in the past, 2K and Live. But yeah, Rick Fox, I don't get what they were thinking. And it's the same in 2K17, by the way. By default, NBA 2K17, Rick Fox is just a driving, dunking machine. Rick Fox wasn't like that. Listen, folks, I watched Rick Fox in his early career as a Celtic. Never missed a Celtics game back then. I watched him when he was with the Lakers, etc., before he, for his years there and then up until his retirement and everything. Rick Fox was not a high flyer.
No.
Rick Fox was not a flashy player. Rick Fox was not particularly fast, etc. But man, in all of these different games for all these different companies, they made Rick Fox some sort of dunking, slashing machine. And you can see it in NBA Inside Drive 2003. My brother and I get absolutely viciously dunked on whenever we play against Rick Fox. He's like that in some of the older Live games. He's been like that in some of the early 2K games. He's like that in Shootout. He just throws it down like crazy. I don't know what their thing is with Rick Fox, but they got him painted all wrong.
One-time captain of the Celtics, Rick Fox.
Yeah, I mean, captain, not captain of dunking.
No.
Not captain of slashing.
No.
But yeah, captain nonetheless. The Gerald Green thing is funny too, because Gerald Green is another player that the game never could figure out how to make him realistic. He's another type of, like I said, I commented on what he said. Is kind of like another Alonzo G case where he's a guy that can hit from the outside, but then also is just super quick and almost unstoppable going to the hoop, and you can just throw it down with him over and over and over again.
I feel like Josh Smith was another player that was kind of like that, kind of difficult to figure in games, or even a Gerald Wallace, and they were all-stars, one-time all-stars, I believe, both of them, and were pretty good players in reality as well, but often a little bit overrated in games, or difficult, as you say, to really capture, because you have that athletic ratings or the very pumped-up defensive ratings, rebounding ratings, so they were always a little bit stronger in video games than they perhaps should have been.
Yeah, Josh Smith, definitely. We remember having battles against Josh Smith, and he was a guy that I always liked to use because it was so fun getting out on the break and dunking with him and dunking all over my opponent and whatnot. And you could knock down threes with him. He'd be on the boards. He'd be swatting shots at the rim. Josh Smith was a pretty good player. Like, he was definitely a good player, but he was definitely overpowering in games.
And finally, we have Lil Dino 713. Says Coutinho Mobley, and again that goes back to the point you raised about if you have someone who can shoot, and you know the mechanics, the shooting mechanics in a game that player is in, you can just knock down threes all day, and that's obviously what Mobley could do. Pretty good shooter in real life. Again, a fine role player for many years in the league, and running mate of Steve Francis for a while there as well on a couple of different teams. But yeah, certainly could do a bit more, even more damage with him in video games.
Yeah, it's not far-fetched to have Coutinho Mobley be your leading scorer over Steve Francis in many games using the Rockets, just for the fact that Mobley was a better three-point shooter than Francis. And you'd be, searching out that three, and he could get hot, and he would just make three after three after three. Meanwhile, you're trying to get to the hoop with Francis, and you might be getting stopped. Right. So, Mobley's another one of those guys, another Eric Gordon type that you could definitely overachieve with.
How about that short-lived backcourt of the 99 Rockets with Mobley and Michael Dickerson as the backcourt?
I liked Michael Dickerson.
Yeah,
I actually like
before
Dickerson.
injuries,
I liked him with the Grizzlies as well. I thought he was a really good player. It's funny. I was playing. I want to say it was NBA starting 5, and I was using Michael Dickerson, and he's really good in that game. But he can do a lot of different things on the floor, and he was one of those guys that it's too bad the way his career kind of fizzled out and whatnot because of injuries and stuff. Because he was a pretty good player.
That'd be a rather unique classic team to have. I mean, obviously you need to license Barkley for it to do it, but the 99 Rockets with Pippen, Barkley, and Olajuwon, and that young backcourt of the rookie backcourt of Mobley and Dickerson and Matt Maloney, I think, still on the bench at that year, and possibly a couple of others as well, whose names are escaping me at the moment. What an interesting team. The 99 season produced a few of those lineups that were quite unique because of that abbreviated off-season after the lockout of 98-99 that they kind of threw a bunch of teams threw together. A lot of some teams still were together if they were still on the contract, and they've got the implosion of the Bulls with after the last dance. But then you've got some of those makeshift lineups like the Rockets had, and trying to assemble that new big three with Pippen, Barkley, and Olajuwon past their prime. Quite some interesting lineups from that 99 season. It's a campaign that I kind of have an odd nostalgia for. I mean, it was very tough going from being watching my favorite team, the Bulls, dominate to what they were that season. But oddly nostalgic for some of those odd lineups.
I have nostalgia for it, but I absolutely do not like that Rockets team. I don't like the Pippen Rockets. I'm not a fan of that season, especially because I know what Pippen and Barkley were going through at the time. They didn't have a good relationship.
No,
that didn't work out.
Surprising. What a shock.
Whatnot. Yeah, right. Yeah. I think that their last true chance to win a title in the 90s was with Drexler in 96-97.
Yep.
I thought the players were still at the age where they could have won it at that point, and I thought they played incredibly well together overall. Obviously stunned by the Jazz in 6 games in the Western Conference Finals with that shot by Stockton with Barkley closing out, etc. But yeah, I'm not a fan of that Rockets team. It's a team that I actually try to actively avoid in video games. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess I like it for the oddity of it, but yeah, no, I definitely see your point on that one.
Well, I think Steve Francis playing with Hakeem Olajuwon's an oddity.
Yes,
right? Because that did and that actually happened.
2 years.
So Steve Francis played with Steve Francis played with Olajuwon and Barkley.
And Yao Ming.
And Steve Francis also played with Yao Ming. Yeah, exactly. So I find that kind of fascinating.
That's true. But yeah, the 99 season, because of the lockout, because of that, it's such a transitional year with some very strange lineups that it's certainly not the best season. I've seen some people say it's the best season because of how frenetic it was and how it was shorter and those strange lineups and how open it seemed after the Bulls had fallen off. Obviously, I wouldn't say it's the best, but it's certainly a very interesting year because of all the surrounding stories and the surrounding context of it. But yeah. Pippen, Barkley, and Olajuwon didn't quite work out as they were hoping.
Yeah, I'd say about the 98-99 season, there was still a lot of talent in the league, a ton of talent in the league. I thought it was still a great time for the NBA, the late 90s and early 2000s, some of my favorite time of the NBA. But I certainly would never go as far as to say is that the 50-game season in 98-99 is the best.
No, and a lot of players not in shape or in game form. Not some pretty ewgly basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of intriguing teams. I've talked about the 98-99 Knicks, with, Patrick Ewing. Unfortunately, he wasn't healthy for the playoffs, and who knows what would have happened if he was, right? Because he still had some left in the tank and whatnot. That team with Patrick Ewing, Allen Houston, Latrell Sprewell, Larry Johnson and whatnot. I laugh because, people talk about it being watered down and whatnot. In the 90s, which is just absolutely ridiculous. But, they don't acknowledge that, Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler made an NBA Finals recently. Yeah. And the Devin Booker Suns and whatnot. But
that was the toughest finals in history.
When I think about those teams, when I think about those teams making the finals, I laugh when people should acknowledge the fact that team that I just mentioned of the Knicks that Knicks team would wipe the floor with talent-wise, physicality, all of that stuff, would wipe the floor with both that Miami Heat and Suns team. So, like, I don't know. I that's why I think the Kendrick Perkins and, all these people in the media that are crapping on 90s basketball, 80s basketball, etc. I think that there's so much context missing, and they're just full of it.
Of course, a couple of decent rookies that year, Vince Carter, Paul Pierce. Vince Carter going on to play 22 years in the league, being the last player from the 90s still standing. A couple of years ago when he finally did call it a day. But what you're telling me, Derek, is that you don't buy the fact that the bubble championship is the toughest championship in NBA history and worth 2 rings, as Nick Wright said?
Oh my God, don't even get me started on Nick Wright, and don't get me started on the bubble. Give me a break.
But thank you for those responses to the mailbag question. Always fun to talk about those Virtual Hardwood Legends. And again, Derek, the great thing about these topics as we brought them up on the show, and we love the interaction with the listeners, please keep it coming, is that there's a lot of common ground. Even if some of the names are different from those Virtual Hardwood Legends, a lot of people have that same experience of the role player that was just unstoppable in video games, and it was a big part of their nostalgia for games and their fond memories of their favorite games, just like we have. So along with the collecting and going back and playing old favorites, and the celebration of basketball gaming history that we've been trying to do through Wayback Wednesday and on the podcast, and through your many tweets in the past couple of weeks with the great additions to your collection. It's just great to be able to share that with our fellow basketball gamers and see that we have those common experiences. It's really cool.
Yeah, please keep sharing, community. Share your experiences, but also share your collections and share your highlights and whatnot. I love seeing them. I love being able to take your place for the top 10 and whatnot. But, just seeing you tweet, talk about some of these games from the past and present and whatnot, I love seeing it.
Please keep that coming and connect with us on social media. We will be promoting our socials again shortly. But that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week, either on the NLSC, m-live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. And yes, we do want to connect with you on social media. So, Derek, as always, I'll throw it to you to promote your handles first.
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at D4384 or at D43G. I'm also on the NLSC, D43. I am on YouTube as well, D43.
I am Andrew in our forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. Our Instagram is NLSC Basketball. Our aforementioned YouTube channel is youtube.com/NBA Series Center. And of course, give a look to the NLSC itself, NBA-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.